really, really lovely to see you. Thank you so much for giving us time. Got a cracking team today to give you some insights. I think the world is changing. I mean, it's a bit glib to say, but it changes fast. But I think it's quite a different environment to what it was last year. And we've got two people who have cutting edge, up to the date views on that. What we really want to talk to is promotions. It's a bit of a dirty word for some people, but we want to talk about how you make sure that you don't leave money on the table in this year of all years, because it's really, really important that for the sake of your finance director, if no one else, you maximize the productivity of what you are doing today. So really, really pleased to see you. Just by way of background and introductions, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rosie. I'm CEO and co-founder at Nibble. And Nibble is all about championing smarter online promotions and win-win outcomes for both the customer and the brand. Some of our customers are not so keen on that. They want them to be win for the brand, but we want them to be win for everybody. For those of you who don't know, we have an AI chatbot that lets you negotiate one-to-one with every customer and to get an instant deal, which makes both you and your customer smile. It's been proven to more than double conversion rates and measurably improve customer engagement, and stops the retailer or the brand from giving away more margin than they need to. Lets you take back control of your discounting. And that's why we're here to talk about promotions today, because that's what we care about more than anything, is making sure that our brands have a fantastic experience from discounting and promotions, but that also translates through to cutting edge customer experience. Today, I am joined by two fantastic guest speakers who I've known for some time, who are both really insightful, and I'm really grateful for your time. So thank you very much, Nishant and Andy. We've got Nishant, who is head of digital products at Solo Brands, which is a US brand company that owns Solo Stoves, which is outdoor equipment like fire pits, and it owns Chubbies, which sells menswear to do with often very snazzy shorts. And Nishant actually has a very strong background in pricing and customer loyalty, because he used to work in the hotel industry. And I think it's quite an interesting crossover, because they're very dynamic with their pricing and their promotions. So it's quite an interesting crossover between the two. And then we've got Andy Mulkey, who's strategy and insight director at AMLG. And anyone who is anyone in e-commerce knows Andy, and he knows everything about them, much to their chagrin. So let you introduce each other, introduce yourselves too. So Nishant, maybe you could go first, and then Andy, if that's okay.
Great. Thanks, Rosie. So I was going to introduce the brands, but quick introduction about Solo Brands. So it's a family of 4 brands: Solo Stove, Chubbies, Oro Kayak, and Isle Paddleboards. And I've been building digital product across these 4 brands, and most recently starting to focus on the Chubbies brand. Like you mentioned, worked in hospitality, so worked with the Intercontinental Hotel Groups before this, and then American Airlines, so worked in the airlines. So extremely familiar with product management, with digital product, with loyalty, retention. It's a fun space to be in. So.
Excellent. And Andy?
Yeah, Nishant, I was going to introduce you because I know everybody, but you've stolen it there. So yeah, I'm Andy Mulkey from IMRG. We're a trade body for online retail in the UK. Hence, I know lots of things about lots of companies. So we have an index that we get the sales figures in from retailers every week. So we know which categories are doing well, which ones are not doing well, which individual companies are doing well, but I'm not allowed to tell you about that, I'm afraid. So yeah, we've got lots of knowledge, and I'll hopefully share a bit of that with you today.
Fantastic. Well, let's start with possibly the almost the most sort of headline question, but it feels like lots of brands don't really know the right discount to give when they're planning their promotional strategies. And it's in fact something I was talking with a client about even yesterday. And obviously the bigger the better from the customer's perspective, but that's not going to work for your brand. So Nishant, maybe you could start. Do you have an overarching kind of rule of thumb or code of conduct that helps you determine what's the right promotion?
Well, I think trying to figure out the right promotion is definitely a science. It's not an art, right? So you have to look at your customers, you have to know the data, And then even across solo brands, we're all constantly trying to find what this right promotion, this right discount is. So we use A/B testing, we use personalization, we have customer segmentation, and then obviously a lot of customer data that helps us determine this right promotion. So you start off with something, see if it's working well, and then you optimize from there. Examples of things that we have or we offer right now, we have the welcome offers to new customers, and that could be either a discount or a percentage off their first purchase or consecutive purchase. And we want to stay engaged with customers beyond that first interaction. And then beyond that, we have multiple different promotions. So we have bundles, we have subscriptions, we have loyalty and membership specific promotions. And then, obviously discounts across different categories. And then one thing that is quite interesting is our free gift with purchase, which has been quite successful at Chubbies. So I think overall, with our promotions, we just try to gamify the experience as much as possible, to really keep that customer engaged and to make it a win-win for both. What's the gift with purchase? So it's essentially different thresholds that customers can reach. And if you reach that threshold of a basket size, they would essentially be eligible for a different gift that's available directly in their shopping cart. There's something to wear, though. Another item of clothing, another. It could be an item of clothing. It could be an accessory. It could be something different completely. Yeah. Interesting. And you said you test things a lot, and sometimes I hear people say it's quite hard to test promotions without having a customer service problem when somebody might have seen, frankly, two different prices or two different promotions within a short period of time. Is there a secret sauce around that? There is no secret sauce. I think that obviously you use a lot of historic data, so you see what's worked in the past. That's probably one level of data that you have. And then as you test out things, if you tried out something, it's not working, you would probably have a tier and you start going up that tier, going down that tier. And essentially that's how you offer the promotions and just make that, hey, from so-and-so time, we are now increasing our discounts to this much, right? So I would say that's the way that you would probably test it out. It's not a true A/B test in that way because it's difficult to do, but again, you have to see what works and you have to optimize, on the fly. It's not something that you just do it and it's going to work all the time. So definitely something that has to be optimized over time. Interesting. Okay, I could drill in a little bit more, but I'm just gonna bring Andy in for a moment, because I know, Andy, you see overall industry performance, right? And you track very significantly, the sales metrics. But I always worry that when we track those sales metrics, the profit can sometimes come as a bit of a shock in the reporting cycle. And you've got things like very high cost inflation at the moment. Is there anything you're seeing in the metrics that you follow that helps you monitor that or understand that?
So the thing that we get from the retailers is revenue. So it's revenue before, returns and all that stuff is made. So it's just like how much money we made effectively. We sometimes raise the prospect of us maybe measuring profit for them, but they always slam the door and say, no, absolutely not. In terms of how performance is going, it's very complicated, obviously, because of the lockdowns and things. The year-on-year measures have gone a bit mad. So it's quite difficult to understand, but there's no doubt that it's not going very well. And for the last 22, 23 months, maybe now, it's been negative every month, following a pandemic boom, with a slight exception for November, where it was about flat. So, growth has been falling away from a revenue perspective. Now, it could be that, as you say, it could be that the revenue maybe isn't great, but actually profits are sort of holding up all right. I couldn't quantify that for you with the data that we see, but anecdotally, when I speak to people, it's not the impression that I get, that they're really sort of happy with it. So the role of sort of discounting and all that, I think the thing to say about it is, like, you mentioned at the beginning, it is a bit of a dirty word, but it's also a perfectly valid thing to do, right? So the reason that discounting exists is usually it's a clearance thing. We've got too much of this in the warehouse. Got to try and get some new stock in, so let's try and get rid of it for as cheap as we can. So that is fine, and I think people understand that. When you see a website and it says clearance sale or whatever, end of season sale, they kind of understand that. I think that the challenge that we get into though is when you just say, look, it's 40% off, you know, everything sort of thing for this week only. And the real problem with, you know, and again, there's no harm in you doing that, you know, running a flash sale, getting a jump on your competitors, you know, fine. But the problem is with discounting is it's extremely contagious. And if some people get sort of caught up in it and they just won't come out of it, you know, then others feel like they get dragged into it as well. And it just spreads and it spreads and it spreads. And the times when it gets worst are when times are hard and you start to see companies under quite a lot of pressure, which makes them really press the discounting button. And I suppose at the moment, because of, you know, the economic situation, you have had a few casualties recently, large companies going bust. You know, it does mean that they sort of apply the pressure. So I think you've got a bit of a spread at the minute.
I think you've also got very different ownership models. I mean, I've got a background in financing, and actually the type of ownership model you have reflects how long ahead you can look and how much pressure you might be on in the short term. Maybe you've got a lot of debt, or maybe you've got to sell, or maybe you've got a patient owner. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, underneath that, behind every company, everyone's got their own problems, haven't they? You know, sometimes I'll speak to people and I say, oh, you didn't have a very good Black Friday, did you? You know, what went wrong? What went wrong with the campaign? And then it turns out they had a system glitch, or, you know, so demand was actually okay, but they had some sort of screw up internally that meant they couldn't service orders or take any more orders or something. You know, it's just little things like that you don't see with the, you know, the front gate kind of thing.
So do either of you have, so this is a sort of quick fire round, but do you either of you have one piece of data or a small piece of data that you really like to track, that you really think at the moment is particularly insightful? What are you like walking into the office on a Monday morning and demanding from your team or scrabbling around on your desk for?
I think there's probably a couple of them for me. Obviously, looking at the digital experience, I think conversion rate is probably the key one, just to see how frictionless the journey is across you know, our digital properties. But obviously, like I mentioned, there's multiple different data points that we want to keep a track of. And like you mentioned in the previous question, you know, looking at revenue is relevant, but looking at profit margins are also important. So obviously, trying to find a balance between the two is extremely important, and that's how I think we kind of look at an overall view of, you know, revenue conversion, average order value, and then profit margins across all our different product lines, and make sure that everything's doing well. But I would say that conversion rate is probably an important one, just to make sure that everything's doing fine at a high level.
Yeah, sorry to chime in with what you said, but it is conversion actually. So conversion is the thing that's fallen away very much, and the bits that make that up are the interesting bits. So all the traffic that goes to the website, what percentage converts? That's your conversion. Mm-hmm. But at each stage of the journey, they've got to make a decision, right? So you've got to add something to your basket, you've got to proceed to the checkout and stuff. And those bits, we track that as well. And there's a few of those that have crashed. So the add to basket rate, for example, has dropped really quite dramatically, you know, to the tune of sort of 20–25% down on where it was. And I'm going to try and draw a graph for you here. So if you split out all the retailers in that metric that we track, before they were sort of dotted around like this between sort of 20 and 10% or so. And then what happened is when you get to the start of 2022 and all the difficult economic stuff comes in, instead of being like that, they sort of drop. So there's not really many anymore over 15–16%, and then they're all quite bunched up around there. So from the discounting perspective, you think, well, oh no, that's dropped. Maybe we could just stick some discount in there to try and drive it. I think with some areas of the website, it just is the case that people are a lot more hesitant about doing things at the moment. So, it's not necessarily let's panic and press that button to try and get it up again. I think it's difficult to get it back up again at the moment, things being what they are.
Yes, it's acknowledging what your competitors are doing as well, isn't it? And making sure that you can not necessarily race them to the bottom, but you have to acknowledge what's going on in the rest of the market.
And I would say that reiterating on my point, right? I think when you look at conversion across each step, like Andy mentioned, just making sure that each interaction or each decision that customers have to make from, one step to the other, it's just easy and just falls in place. I think as long as you can do that, you can optimize conversion to the greatest possible value.
And when we start working with brands at Nibble, we sometimes find that we can achieve a much lower percentage discount than what they have been offering as a standard, like maybe as a first customer discount or as a sign up discount. And we sort of say, oh, well, don't assume it needs a double-digit discount. And then we are solving for a much lower percentage off, possibly a little subtle dig or a plug. But have you seen any other tools or tricks for moving away from a deeper discount, right? Like you end up in a situation, you think, oh, wish I hadn't got here. What are the tips and tools for sort of walking your way back out of it?
I think time of year actually is reasonably significant. So something like November, are you going to be able to get out a discount in November? Probably not the right time of year to do it. But when you get to around this sort of time, actually, the volumes are, it's not the same for every category, obviously, but for quite a lot of categories, volumes do tend to be a bit lower this time of year. So if you were going to try and get out of it, the sort of quieter time feels like the time to sort of scale it back a little bit. And then you might find that other people start doing that as well, because they're looking at you and thinking, well, hang on a minute, maybe we can do it as well. But I think, like I say, discounting has its role. It really absolutely does. But it's difficult to just get stuck in that moment where you go, oh, what are we going to do? Should we discount? I think that is the reason people buy from you because you discount, right? For some brands, yes, it is. But for others, people buy from you because they like what you've got and they like things about the way that you present it, right? So the brand values and stuff that you may stand for. You may have a good sustainability message behind what you do. And if you get all that stuff right, it feels like, the need to really to jump on and use discounting excessively rather than for clearance or for, whatever activity you need to do. It feels like that stuff becomes a little bit less necessary because people look at you and think, well, that's the company that I like, though.
I'm going to reiterate what you just said, Andy. I think having a good story to tell on your digital properties, making sure that it's engaging content, having different capabilities on your website that make customers feel like they want to engage with the brand. So having great customer service, having free shipping, free returns. I think these are all different strategies that kind of help with converting customers and not going into this trap of discounting or over discounting. Another one I think you mentioned is just having good inventory management, right? If you can keep stock of what you have and reduce that excess inventory, there's less needs for these markdowns. And then I would say, obviously another important one is just focus on retention, right? If you get customers coming back and shopping with you, there's less need to kind of go into this trap of keep on discounting over and over. And then I think the fun piece, I think, is just gamify. I think I mentioned this before, is just gamifying your overall experience. I think it just leads to more engagement with customers and makes it more fun for them to shop. And again, you're kind of getting that purchase behavior more out of that experience versus because of a certain price or a certain discount.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Nothing like a little bit of gamification. But I think even the most serious brands can afford to have a little bit of fun on the website, right? Like even the luxury brands, people went into the luxury clothes shops and handbag shops for fun, right? So there's no reason why it needs to be super serious. Donovan, who works in the beauty industry, has put a question in the chat. I don't know if anyone's willing to attempt whether they think free delivery promotions is a important thing. I have heard it be a cleanliness factor in the past, but I don't know if I'm out of date.
Yeah, I think it's got its role. I think one of the things to consider there, of course, is how much is delivery. Are you saving actually a decent amount here or not? It can be the sort of thing where you might be able to push the average basket value up a little bit. So, for example, you're somebody who offers free delivery over £70. You say, hey, today it's free delivery or whatever. If people maybe normally spend £40 or something, they might say, well, you know what, I'm going to push that up a little bit because I can push it up without having to go over £70. in order to get the free delivery. So I think the communication of it and working out why someone would use that and what impact it would have on those other metrics is probably a factor. But it's certainly worth considering.
Yeah, I think I want to reiterate. I think that Amazon Prime spoiled all of us with fast and next day delivery. So I think that there's definitely that expectation that comes from customers. But it's totally right. Looking at what our customers usually spending and making it again kind of within that threshold for them to add maybe something else to kind of get that free shipping. But obviously looking at the cost of shipping before you offer that.
We had Janice on a prior webinar, and she works at Look Fabulous Forever, so also in the beauty industry. And they experimented, and they actually brought their minimum threshold for free delivery down. And they found that more people came to their website because they thought it was more achievable to make this free delivery threshold. And then they focused on the upsell in the cart. I've also seen very successful deployment of post-purchase upsell, which is even later in the process. And I only say that because I got caught with it at Christmas time. I bought 2 of the same thing for 2 different godchildren, a gift, and they said, if you like this one, have you got someone else who would like it? And I thought, actually I do. And then they slotted it in the same package and got the delivery. So sometimes just getting them over the line for the first one is worth it with the free delivery. It's perhaps counterintuitive, but we had that example. Interesting. So I'm going to move on because I don't want to run out of time. I'm going to do a quick fire round. Both of you have been in the industry for some time now, and we're very grateful for your experience. But is there something related to building a promotional strategy which you wished you'd known 5 years ago? And for the benefit of the people on the call today, you're very willing to share and pass on so they don't need the next 5 years to think of it.
Yes, here's one you can have for free. Black Friday. When should you launch your campaign? Right, we did a bit of a study into this year, and we looked at the retailers that launched early and the ones that launched a bit closer to Black Friday, and then we worked out the proportion of sales that they got across those weeks. And the really interesting thing is that it didn't matter at all when the retailers launched; they got the same share of sales landing in Black Friday week. So when you're pulling yourself into all sorts of different shapes about, oh God, when should we do it? Just bear in mind that it didn't really make that much of a difference to the overall picture.
What I'm going to add, I think, is 2 pieces of nuggets here. One thing is, one size does not fit all. I think that you got to look at your customers and make sure that you can customize your promotional strategies based on your customer mix. And then the second piece is good and engaging content and messaging is really, really important. Just don't be generic, right? I think you can always win customers over based on having that fun message or something that's really engaging that kind of draws them in to even click on your website or a social media ad or anything. I think that's probably the most important thing that I would say.
I think that's so true. I mean, we're big into our copywriting here at Nibble. What you say and how you say it, so important. It makes such a difference having, frankly, brilliant copy. And we can all tell when it's written by ChatGPT, unfortunately. We particularly can.
It's going to get better.
Slower than we will. That's my bet. But it is good. But it does tend to be a little bit generic. Fine. So quick fire round on horror stories. Has anyone heard of or got some horror stories, a promotion that went wrong that you would recommend we avoid at all cost?
I've had a fun one. I think we were working on a pricing promotion strategy, and we somehow in the back end we set up the discount to be 90% instead of 10%. And this was again across different markets, and again not current companies. So, but we launched this promotion at night, and we woke up in the morning to a nightmare. But all our international customers were getting these products essentially for free or relatively free. So word of advice is always check your work and make sure that you look at edge cases and make sure that if you have international customers and international websites, always test out those, because those are easily forgotten, and you never know what happens there.
So true, so true. Attention to detail. Thank you very much. Andy?
Yeah, plenty of people really have told me about it's the manual error stuff. It might be putting the wrong figure in, as you say, but also forgetting to take down a banner afterwards. And then it's on there for 6 months afterwards, and you keep thinking, why are people, why are they paying so little for these things, but someone's forgotten where it is. And it's just, it's a hygiene factor, isn't it? Should we go and just have a quick poke around and make sure there's not any messaging anywhere?
It also goes to keeping things simple, doesn't it? And then it's easier to get it right, isn't it? It's when it gets complicated, when there's the spin the wheel and the pop up and the pop down and the this and the that, like it all messes each other up. We've only got time for one more question, so I'd like to ask the sort of looking forward. The looking forwards question is, how has your brand strategy or promotional strategy, how is it changing, perhaps relative to last year, to tackle what we're seeing today? Nishant first, and then maybe Andy for a broader industry picture.
Yeah, so I think one important thing our CEO recently mentioned, he said that, we want to be a family of brands that is loved by our customers, right? So what that means is that we have to be really strategic with the promotions that we run, that we offer, versus just being perceived as a brand or a family of brands that discounts. So what that means for us is that we have to take a really good hard look at all the promotions that we run in 2023 and beyond that, and then continue personalizing and tailoring it to our customer mix, individual customer mix across these brands. Obviously, a greater focus on loyalty and retention, and then continue to add more gamification to increase engagement. So I would say those are probably the key differences or adaptations to the strategy in 2023 and beyond.
Thank you. And Andy?
We're in a very difficult situation. The economic situation is terrible. And you see that reflected in the metrics, like say conversions dropped, the add to basket is through the floor, etc. They're not going to suddenly go back up again. If you think about inflation being at 10%, whether it's not going to then go to minus 10%, and a pint isn't £7 anymore. Right? A pint is £7 now. That's not changing. I went to the zoo a couple of weeks ago. It's £87 for 2 adults and a child to get into the zoo. These prices are not coming down again, and they might even go up further. So we're just in a very, very difficult situation. So you have to factor that in. That said, I think when you're looking at things, it's really good to get the full context of how you're analysing your performance. And a really smart thing to do is to just always consider the weather, and not just the weather this year, but like the weather last year. So when you're looking at, why are we against 12% up last year? And it could be because it was raining, or because it was sunny, or there was a storm or whatever. That stuff really has a big impact. So if you look at it and you think, oh blimey, we're down this week, we better press the button. Just consider the context of what happened last year, and try to get that into the way that you analyse it. Actually, it's worth just making a note of the weather in spreadsheets and saying, it rained this week. Just so next year when we look back at that, we can say it was raining, because it's a huge impact.
So interesting. I bet it is, even if you're selling holidays, let alone anything, right? Thank you very much.
Selling holidays, I think.
Particularly. I used to work at Forest Holidays, and there, it's all about making sure someone wants to book their summer break in the winter time and things. Really helpful and really practical advice, which is what we were really hoping to get out of this. We're out of time, and so thank you very much for your insights, Nishant and Andy. Massive round of applause, virtual round of applause. So thank you very much. I will hang on for a couple of minutes more if anybody wants to pop a question in the chat, but we'll finish the main proceedings, and thank you very much for your time.